You're listening to Two Girls, One Crossword.
Well, I'm officially sweated through the back of my shirt, so I think we're ready to just get into the
start?
podcast.
Wow,
Yeah.
I'm so proud of you. Already through your shirt?
I got the podcast sweats, baby.
She's got
Preemptively.
it. If you don't know about podcast sweats, they're the real deal. And you're not a real podcast host unless you sweat through your clothes. I wrapped myself in a blanket before we started recording, and I know that I'm going to have to rip it off at some point throughout recording.
In 10 seconds.
Yeah, so.
Thanks for joining us and our sweat. I'm Grace.
And I'm Chelsea.
We're the Good Evening Girls, and this is Two Girls, One Crossword.
Your favorite weekly Podword Crosscast. Thanks for joining us again for another week.
Another exciting week. Actually, this is an exciting week. I think the last time we recorded was before the election results.
Hey, it's Fat Albert. It's not. It's Joe Biden. He won. So
Yeah, which is fine. But Trump is gone, and that's what's most important.
that's
So.
the most important. Not yet officially gone. I'm kind of still holding out for him being dragged out of the White House in handcuffs because he won't leave. That would be great. Could you imagine that being broadcast on national television? And then I would play that at my wedding ceremony and my funeral ceremony. It'd be the best day of my life.
I'll make sure that's arranged.
But I digress.
Yeah, I once he's out, then I'll fully unclench, but I'm still
A little tense over
a
here.
little nervous.
Yeah, it's adding to the sweats. Okay.
Should we get into our heights and shites of the last 2 weeks? I might have some from 2 weeks ago since we didn't record.
Okay. Yeah, I definitely did not include any from the last 2 weeks. I have some from the last week, though, so let's get into it. You want to kick us off?
Yeah, well, I just want to say, I saw earlier, I think it was in the New York Times, I didn't highlight it, but again, they include Idris Elba, who comes up a lot in crosswords, as his role in Cats, as McCavity. I just love it when actors get referred to by their least successful movie. So in the USA Today on November 4th by Zaushine Bernakel, 23 Down, Jupiter Ascending actress Kunis. And it's Mila Kunis. But it's
why?
I guess, you want to switch it up. If obviously, Idris, how else could you? That's only his name, right? That's not a proper noun for anything else.
I'm sure there's other people with that name, but Idris is the one and only. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it's you can't say the same movie every time. You got to switch it up.
Mm-hmm. And I do want to say that Idris Elba's performance as McCavity is different from the Broadway play, okay? Because McCavity's kind of not really in the Broadway play, but he has lines and his own song in the Cats 2019, the movie Spectacular. So
yeah, he has his, a whole arc. He's not even in the play. He's one of the ensemble characters, puts on a coat and is scuttling around the back of the stage.
Exactly. But in the movie, he has a coat which he rips off, and then you get to see his second coat, which is his skin coat. And that is just wild.
Yeah. It's
if you're into furries, the movie Cats is for you.
Actually, I feel like furries don't like cats because it's too realistic. I read that somewhere.
Oh, okay. Sorry to any furries out there. Yeah. What was I going to bring up? Oh, I did a Friday New York Times Amy Lucido puzzle. If you are an avid listener of our podcast, you know that we like Amy's puzzles. So without boring, I'm not going to bore you with every single clue from her puzzle that I've really liked because there's a lot. I'm going to give you 2, 13 across. Loaded questions, ?
That was one of mine.
Is bar trivia.
Yeah.
It's so good. Another good one, 26 across, strip at a beach. The answer is tan line. Not to physically strip, get your mind out of the gutters, but a strip of your skin.
Yes, we get it, Chelsea. I liked from that puzzle too, just because I was shocked to see this in the New York Times, 1 across, and it was the opener. YouTube star Chamberlain, who The Atlantic called the most talked about teen influence in the world, and I knew her, Emma Chamberlain, because I watch a lot of YouTube and stuff, but I was shocked to see her headlining a New York Times.
Hello.
I'm sure a lot of people were like, huh?
They're like, who is Emma Chamberlain? It's okay, get on YouTube.
She's a millionaire, so.
So she makes more money than you do, and I do. So I didn't say that with shade. I'm just saying, factually, she makes more money than probably all of the listeners here.
We don't know that. We do not know their situation.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to shit on anybody's demographic. What else? Did you do you didn't do the Saturday, November 7th, New York Times? Okay. That was Cameron, Austin, Collins, and Palo Pasco. There's some pretty good clues and answers in this puzzle. This one I particularly loved. Because it plays into the type of humor I like, which is just strange. 20 across, chain restaurant, ... or what a kangaroo might say, question mark. And the answer is IHOP.
Oh, okay. I was like, Outback Steakhouse?
It's like, yes, a kangaroo, if it could speak, would say IHOP. I hop, therefore I am. 40
Sure.
across, star attraction, question mark. With celebrity crush. So that was good.
Cute. I like that.
And then 9 down, not to be morbid. Final exam, question mark.
Coronary report?
Great guess. Autopsy. Fit better for the puzzle.
No, that works. That works. Makes more sense, actually, because that's an actual exam. I think a report is just like
what
your
the guy,
findings.
Yeah, true. Not everybody gets autopsied.
No, you have to ask for them and don't let them say no. Okay.
Seriously.
I will get everyone I know who dies. I am asking for an autopsy, just in case.
I need to see this autopsy report on my desk by tomorrow morning.
I will spend all my savings on that. I kind of have a shite. Well, we'll see. It's just a topic of conversation. We don't have those recently, but it's from the Tuesday New York Times by Robert Fisher, November 10th. 2 down. Discussing politics and religion with strangers often.
Is it taboo?
No-nos.
Okay. I didn't do the Tuesday, but yeah, taboo, no-nos.
Yeah. But, I mean, it says often, so whatever, there's a qualifier in there. But I feel like these days, politics.
You gotta do it.
You can't keep it to your... It's
people's lives are on the line if you keep quiet. So that's basically what we're getting at here. And there are other things out in the world that are legitimate no-nos, like killing someone or, I don't know, stealing from the poor. That's a no-no. That's a great clue.
In some people's books. Yeah, I think especially like now, our generation, we talk about politics and religion all the time. Politics more than religion, but...
Right, but we're not afraid to talk about those things. I think in prior generations, especially like in baby boomers, you don't talk about, religion, you don't talk about who you're voting for, you don't talk about, politics in general, you don't talk about salary. And it's like all of these things are mechanisms to keep us with as cogs in a system.
Keep the people down, okay?
Yes. No, and if you're silent, you're complicit, okay? So that's a fact. Fact of life, baby.
And we're like, what type of menstrual cup do you use?
Exactly. We're like, do you agree with the Pope? Anyway, welcome to our lunch chats.
Yeah, our office is glad that we're gone. You'd always pick the best topics of conversation.
Honestly, some of the reactions we would get at the lunch table were so priceless. There's one guy that used to work with us. He doesn't work with us anymore. I'm not going to say his name. Grace, I'm sure you remember him. He worked down the hall from me on that wing. And I can't even tell you. But anyway, we would say some crazy shit at the lunch table, and he would just be like, wait, what did you just say? I think he said something about pregnancy once, and I think his face just went like drained of color. And it's like, you're so naive.
So proper.
You're right.
No, I mean, we're not rude. We're just, we're very open people, okay? And we didn't always talk about religion and politics. Sometimes we would talk about very lighthearted stuff that no one else cared to talk about, like cats.
Exactly.
Or chiropractor videos on YouTube. That was just
exactly.
Me,
Hello. Jumping off from your point of shits, this is not a shit. This is just, I have a genuine question. If anybody out there is a constructor, please fucking write to me, because this gets my goose every damn time I see it in a crossword. We see it all the time. It's crosswordese, whatever. It's easy letters to put together. This comes from the Sunday, November 9th, WAPO by Evan Bernholz. Shout out to Evan. We love your puzzles.
November 8th.
November 8th. It was called The Sound of Music, which is actually a really fun title because we love the sound of music. Anyway, so 40 across was, in quotes, "This hot tub feels nice." And the answer is but it's spelled A-A-H. And every fucking time, I never learned my lesson, I always put A-H-H, because to me, that's how you spell You don't spell it like, and I feel like I don't fucking get it. So I want to know why it's spelled like that in crosswords. Is that like the correct spelling?
No,
or
I think
are y'all fucked up?
There's probably multiple alternatives, and it's just whatever fits the grid is what they put in there. They do the same thing with like ha, sometimes like he, sometimes just like ha, H-A-H.
Right, but so you would use ha or he or ha in a text.
Or
if I'm saying
the way they say tee, sometimes it's
I,
T-E-H-E-E. But I feel like I've seen A-H-H as well.
Okay, I feel like maybe I only notice when it's AAH because it really bothers me. But yeah, maybe I'm just being unfair. Maybe I'm being really unfair. Maybe it's me. But just write to me. I really did like this puzzle. I'm not going to get into the theme, but it was kind of fun. It was kind of like wordplay and like musical terms and whatever. Would recommend doing the Sunday Waypo if you guys get a chance. It's free. Evan does an incredible job constructing every week. But I do want to shout out 2 clues. One that made me like shiver me timbers because it just made me feel uncomfortable, and I don't understand why, but I still liked it because it's kind of weird. And it's this one, 59 across. This is in brackets, and it is, please milk me, human. And the answer is moo. So when a clue is in brackets, they're looking for like a sound to like represent whatever is in the brackets. And so what's in the brackets is please milk me, human. And the sound for that is moo. And for some reason just made me feel weird, but I also kind of liked it. So.
I felt the same way. I almost highlighted that as one of my like hits. But I want to say cows, they don't like to be milked. I mean, they don't want to be lactating all year round, okay? That's for their babies.
Yeah, not for us, not for our babies.
But I guess when they are engorged, then they are mooing.
They're like,
to be like, get this stuff out of me.
Get it out. Another good one from that puzzle. I just liked this clue. 106 down. Type of dip or a type of dance with dips. And the answer is salsa. So that was just fun. Nice
play on words from that same puzzle, which, by the way, that one is November 1st.
Was it? Okay.
It was 78 across. He has 20/20 visions.
Oh, Biden,
yeah. That
Love
one
it.
Was topical. I'm sure the anthropologists will love to look at that in like 500 years.
Yeah, when they're listening back to our podcast in 500 years. Like,
no, not our podcast. When they're looking through the Washington Post Sunday crosswords.
Okay, it's more likely that they would be listening. They would be going through the crosswords. But hey, who's to say that they won't be listening to our podcast? If you're out
what
there,
if the world ends
you.
And this is like the only record of what humanity was like at this time? They'd be like, no wonder these people all died.
Shameful. Shameful. What else? Oh, from the Sunday, November 9th New York Times, Evan Kalish and Caitlin Reed puzzle. This is the one that had the Idris Elba McCavity cats clue. But another good clue from that is 83 down, one needing new, unburned pants, ? And the answer is liar, as in liar, liar, pants on fire.
Ooh, I like that. That's cute. Very cute.
And do you have anything else?
I do have a couple hits from the Washington Post Sunday, November 8th called Capital Gains. This is like one of the ones where the theme is in the title.
Okay.
At first I was like, what the heck is going on? And then I realized. Yeah. So for example, 68 across, lucky plants whose leaves were replaced by pub projectiles. And the answer is dart clovers. So dart is a projectile to pub and clover is a lucky plant. But it also, if you take away D and C, because the title of the puzzle is Capital Gains, so DC the capital, then it's art lovers.
Oh, okay,
and then, so another example would be 118 across, actor Cheadle's mollusk-inspired nickname, and it's Don the Clam. And if you take the D and C out, it's on the lamb.
Okay. Nice. Yeah. Don Cheadle was in another puzzle.
I noticed that too. Like, do these people pay to get... If I was ever a celebrity and I made it in the New York Times crossword puzzle, I would... literally frame it.
literally. Somebody out there make her a celebrity and put her in the crossword. God damn it. What else we got here? Okay, I'm going to end my hits and shits with the Wednesday, November 11th New Yorker by Elizabeth Gorski. The opener is great. The word itself is not that exciting, but it's the clue that really just got me. One across. We have too much beer, blank, no one ever. And the answer is said no one ever. I'm like, yes, of course. Why could you have too much beer? That's just rude to think that you could have too much. Another good clue and answer. I really like the answer here. 16 across. Aesthetic, mixing soft, delicate colors with dark, punkish fashion. The answer is pastel goth.
That's you.
I wish, man.
In your dreams.
In my dream. If you looked at me on YouTube right now, I'm in like a t-shirt that's too big and my hair is limp and sad. I wish I was a pastel goth in my heart of hearts.
There's no point dressing up anymore.
There isn't.
In anything.
And then one I wanted to shout out because you did a topic on these. 48 across. I'm going to say it's across. I don't know. Maybe it's down. 48 across. Mythic males with tails.
Merman.
Merman. Yes, Grace did a topic on mermen. She talked about Ariel. It's great, enlightening. Check it out.
Check it out. We're covering like all the mythical figures.
Can you believe it? They show up a lot in crosswords, so you gotta know them, kids.
They do. All right, should we flip a coin?
Let's flip the coin.
I don't know what accent that was. Also, I realize I'm sitting far from the mic, further than usual, so...
Okay, we'll see how it goes in post. Yeah. All right, I'm flipping the coin now. The answer is tails.
That's me! My topic comes from the USA Today November 5th puzzle by Eric Agard, and it is 24 down. Language originated in Connecticut.
Pig Latin.
No, ASL.
Oh shit, cool. I was like, language.
Watch your language, please.
Sorry.
Pun intended. Okay, so ASL. Cool. Age, sex, location. Just kidding.
Love it.
ASL is American Sign Language, for those that don't know, and I'm just going to go down a couple quick facts about it that I pulled from the National Institute on Deafness and Other Communication Disorders. So what is ASL? It's a complete natural language that has the same linguistic properties as spoken languages, with grammar that differs from English. ASL is expressed by movements of the hand and face. It is the primary language of many North Americans who are deaf and hard of hearing, and is used by many hearing people as well. And then another question is ASL the same like all over the world? No, it is American Sign Language. There is no universal sign language. Different sign languages are used in different countries and regions. For example, there's BSL, British Sign Language, and French Sign Language, FSL. So Americans who know ASL may not understand BSL.
Okay, interesting.
How does ASL compare with spoken language? So it's a completely different and distinct language from English. I think a lot of people, like hearing people who weren't really exposed to ASL, like I learned a little bit at day camps and stuff growing up, but you kind of think, oh, it's just a way to like translate English. But that's not true. Like it's its whole own language. It contains all the fundamental features of language with its own rules for pronunciation, word formation, and word order. While every language has ways of signaling different functions, such as asking a question rather than making a statement. For example, English speakers ask a question by raising the pitch of their voice and adjusting word order. ASL users ask a question by raising their eyebrows, widening their eyes, and tilting their bodies forward. And just as with other languages, it has a specific way of expressing ideas. Like other people, like different generations have different ways of, speaking spoken English. It varies also among ASL users. It also has regional accents and dialects. So like certain English words are spoken differently, in the Midwest and the South. ASL also has regional variations in the rhythm of signing, pronunciation, slang, and signs used. And then like age, gender can all affect ASL usage. So finger spelling, which I think I definitely learned that, how to do the whole alphabet. Too. That is used to spell out English words, and each letter corresponds with a different hand shape, and it's often used for proper names or to indicate the English word for something.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's ASL, a quick lowdown to understand it better. But ASL has been around for only 200 years. But experts agree that people have probably been using signs or hand signs to communicate with each other, like basically since civilization started.
Sure.
The rest of this information is from the ASL blog, goreact.com, an article called The History of ASL by Sarah Siemens. So researchers believe that hunters on open plains would use signs to communicate with each other. Since a plains environment doesn't have a lot of physical obstruction, it's just like wide open spaces, as the Dixie Chicks would say. Using signs is like the most obvious way to communicate with each other without scaring off prey. The ancient Great Plains Native Americans also developed a complex signing system. A popular theory onto why they developed this system was so that they could trade in between tribes. So they had a system of hand gestures that were used to negotiate with tribes that didn't speak their language, including European expeditioners. So Columbus has multiple accounts of Native Americans communicating with his crew using like hand signals and signs and stuff.
Okay.
Which you sometimes see depicted in movies.
Right.
I'm thinking this is a good depiction of Native Americans, but like in Peter Pan.
Sure.
But now we know like the real reason why they used those hand signals was to communicate, between tribes who didn't speak the same language. Okay. But the first written record of sign language comes from no other than Ancient
Helen
Greece.
Keller? Oh.
No.
I was going to say, there's a whole thing on TikTok that Helen Keller wasn't real. Just going to throw it out there.
But that's very ableist, and
I know,
a lot of
I'm
people
sorry.
have taken it down. Yeah, have disproved that. But yeah, ancient Greece, that's where everything seems to start on this podcast. So in 5th century BC, the philosopher
I can't believe
Plato,
I said Helen Keller. I'm so sorry out there.
Obviously, sign language already existed when she came around, because that's how she learned to
You said
communicate.
200 years ago, and like that's all I could think about. Anyway, please tell me about ancient
No,
Greece.
this is just the history of hand
Just
sign
signing.
language in general.
Got it.
So
Okay.
Plato wrote in Cratylus, he recorded Socrates as saying, quote, "If we had neither voice nor tongue, and yet wished to manifest things to one another, should we not, like those who are at present mute, endeavor to signify our meaning by our hands, head, and other parts of the body?" So this proves that people at the time who couldn't speak were using some type of sign language to communicate with each other.
Right.
Later, Aristotle became the first person ever to record a claim about deaf people, though it wasn't a good one, and it would go on to badly affect the deaf community for like centuries, essentially.
Great.
So Aristotle said that speech and language were one and the same, and that those who could not speak were unteachable. For the next 2,000 years, deaf people were denied citizenship, religious rights, and were often left out to die or fend for themselves. And because deafness was considered a shameful disability, any form of signing was ostracized and discouraged, making it nearly impossible for these people to communicate freely. In 685 AD, the Archbishop of York, John Beverley, famously taught a deaf boy to speak, but instead of society thinking like, oh, maybe Aristotle was wrong, look, you know, they can be taught to communicate, they instead decided to canonize the Archbishop, saying that he'd like performed a miracle, and, you know, they put it all on him, essentially.
Wow, that's great. I love that. I love that.
So it wasn't until the 16th century that philosophers and teachers really started to question Aristotle's claim that deaf people were unteachable. An Italian physician and mathematician named Girolamo Cardano had a deaf son, and he claimed that hearing wasn't necessary for a person to understand ideas, and he even started to develop his own code of hand gestures to go with written words. In 1570, a Spanish monk named Pedro Ponce de Leon, which is a high school in Miami, started educating his own deaf students, who were all the sons of Spanish nobles. And because they were deaf, they weren't like set in line to inherit anything from their parents. So Leon taught them to read, write, and speak so that they could claim their family's fortunes that rightly belonged to them. And he was successful in teaching them how to do all these things. I don't know if they were able to get claim to their family fortunes, but he was successful in teaching
Where
them.
the hell is Aristotle? I need to have a word.
He's long dead by now. So Cardano and Leon both inspired a Spanish monk named Juan Pablo de Bonet, who developed the first book of sign language in 1620, which,
Damn.
in all things considered, is not that long ago.
No,
considering
it is
deaf people
not.
have been around since, you know, Plato's era.
The beginning of time.
Yeah. But this book included hand shapes that represented sounds, and it was the first published system of finger spelling in history.
Cool.
And though this book was a step in the right direction, it wouldn't be until the 1700s that the next groundbreaking advancement in sign language would happen, aka the French Sign Language Revolution.
Dude, tell me.
So there was a man named, this is a French name, obviously I don't speak, well, not obviously, I do not speak French.
Now it's obvious.
Yeah, now it's obvious. His name is Abbe Charles Michel de Delep. He was a French Catholic priest. The Catholics really were like all in on this thing. I guess everyone was a priest back then. There wasn't
You were
much
either
else to do.
poor, a priest, or you were a noble. Like that's
Exactly.
what you had.
So he studied theology and law, and his service was to the impoverished people of France. And this is where he met twin sisters who happened to both be deaf. So he stepped in as their teacher, and he started his lifelong mission of serving the deaf population in France.
Okay, I'm
So-
here for it.
At the time, the deaf community already used a common sign language, like amongst each other, in Paris at least. It had developed like organically over centuries. So it's not like, I don't want to, you know, say that deaf people were like completely clueless until LEP came along. Like they already had a system that they were using. But LEP added to the like old French sign language system by creating a series of hand signals to replace sounds of the alphabet. In 1760, he founded the first free public sign language school in the world, funded by his own inheritance.
That's what you use your inheritance for, folks.
Yeah. The school was called the Royal Institution of Deaf Mutes. As the French signing system and LEP's methods of teaching continued to develop, deaf French people from all over deaf people from all over France would come to his school. And other countries were like, that's interesting that they're able to communicate with the deaf community.
You're telling me Aristotle wasn't all right?
The Emperor of Austria and the Empress of Russia both sent teachers to learn Lep's teaching style, and his influence eventually led to the creation of 21 schools total in France and other countries. So all it takes is one guy with a big fat inheritance, okay?
You could change the world, folks.
But he wasn't the only sign language teacher at this time. In England, there was a man named Thomas Braidwood, and he had established his own sign language academy. Braidwood taught his pupils using a unique two-handed method of sign language, and this basically went on to become British Sign Language, which is what's used today in the UK.
Okay.
So it makes sense that, I mean, ASL is primarily like one hand, but I guess BSL is
it?
Two hands.
Isn't it two?
Yeah, but I feel like...
If you're signing the alphabet, it's one hand, but I think they use both hands. Like, happy's this.
Yeah, you're right.
I know very little sign language. I do know some.
I remember at my church, we had like a sign language interpreter, and I used to always just watch her the whole time.
I love watching the sign language interpreters. It's amazing.
Okay, but can we talk about that woman who like pretended to be a sign language interpreter to be on the news? I don't know what her deal is. I don't want to like harp on her or anything, but just like
I mean, I had not heard of that, but I'm not surprised also.
But she was doing like fake sign language for like a press conference, and then people were calling in being like, that's not sign language. And there was like no reason. It is kind of funny if it didn't like, harm the people who actually needed the sign language interpretation. But it's like, what a weird price to. Anyways,
it's just
like
supposed to tell you, like, you have to fact check yourself when you're trying to be, if you're trying to be inclusive to like all different types of communities, and you want to provide like interpretation to various communities, whether it's different languages or, like sign language being one of them, you can't just like hire someone off the internet. You need to like do your research.
Well, no, she showed up and she's like, I'm the ASL interpreter. And they were like, okay, sure, go stand over there. I know, it's terrible. But actually, I've seen, and then I looked it up, a lot of times they'll have two sign language interpreters. One is hearing, and then the other person is deaf. So the hearing person will interpret like the speaker and sign language and sign to the deaf interpreter, and then the deaf interpreter will sign to like the audience because they have they're able to be like more fluent or have like a better interpretation way of interpreting.
That's related to, you did a topic way long ago, earlier in the podcast days, on translation. So imagine like the level of translation that's happening there. So like the translation from the speaker to the hearing ASL interpreter to the deaf ASL interpreter.
Yeah.
Dude, I can't wrap my mind around it.
No, you have to be very skilled to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But not everyone was accepting of sign as a way for deaf people to communicate. For example,
oh my God, what?
Yeah. No, this has been like a huge thing. Samuel Heinicke started the first German school for deaf people in 1778, but unlike Lepp, Heinicke was a staunch oralist. So he believed that the primary function of education for deaf children is to develop their spoken language skills so that they could integrate into hearing society. Alternatively, Lepp was the first leader of deaf education who realized that sign language was the way deaf people should be communicating and not just as a way to help them speak oral languages.
Right.
His background in theology and law made him an ally for deaf rights, both legally and in religion, and he was one of the first people in history to publicly assert that deaf people deserve to be treated as fully functioning human beings with something meaningful to contribute to society, even if they spoke a different language, and that is why today, Leppe is known as the father of the deaf.
It's amazing that, I mean, obviously these things have always happened throughout history, but he's like, I think deaf people should be treated like people. And it's like someone out there was like, no. You're like, huh?
Maybe not. Okay,
wow.
So what about America?
Tell me.
This was all happening in France. In 1620, the same year that Bonnet published the first book on sign language, the Mayflower landed in Massachusetts.
Okay.
Among the many immigrants that were coming to the New World were people from Kent County in England, and they brought with them hereditary deafness, which resulted in the creation of Martha's Vineyard Sign Language. I had never heard of this before.
Holy heck in a handbasket.
Yeah. So Martha's Vineyard was home to the largest deaf population on the continent. Everyone, hearing and deaf, would use sign language to communicate, making it one of the few societies in the world where deaf and hearing individuals were fully integrated together in all social, civil, civic, and religious activities in the mid-1700s.
Damn.
But the biggest change in U.S. Sign Language came from Thomas Hopkins Gallaudet, a Yale graduate and an ordained clergyman in Hartford, Connecticut. Again?
You gotta be a priest.
Yeah.
Or a royal. or poor? Pick
So
your lot.
He wanted to be a professional minister, but that all changed when he met 9-year-old Alice Cogswell. Alice was the deaf daughter of Gallaudet's neighbor, and Gallaudet noticed that the other children weren't playing with her, so he started teaching her names of objects by drawing pictures and names in the dirt. She was a quick learner, and her father was so impressed with her progress that he said he would help Gallaudet open up a school for the deaf in America. Her father happened to be very well known and super rich, so it wasn't hard for him to raise funds from the community to send Gallaudet to Europe to learn from the schools out there. Now, originally, he wanted to go to Braidwood Academy in England, but they weren't that welcoming. So instead, he went to the Lepe School for the Deaf that was now being run by Lep's successor, Ab Roch Ambrios Kirkon Sicard. French people have really long names. So Gallaudet met with Sicard and his 2 deaf assistants, Jean Massieu and Laurent Clerc, and told them about his plans to open a sign language school in the U.S., and he eventually convinces Clerc to come to the U.S. with him and open up a public school for the deaf in Hartford in 1817. Hartford, Connecticut. That's from the clue.
Damn.
So their first class only had 9 students, Alice being one of them, but it quickly drew in children from around the country. The signing taught at the school had elements of the French Sign Language and eventually became the ASL that the deaf community still uses today.
Cool.
By 1863, 22 deaf schools were in operation in the U.S., most founded and run by Clerc and Gallaudet's students, and Gallaudet's son Edward helped establish the first college for the deaf in 1864, now known as Gallaudet College.
Okay.
Which I'm pretty sure there's a Netflix show called Deaf U that takes place there.
Oh, okay.
It's like a reality show.
You.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So even though sign language was gaining momentum, the oralist argument was still widespread. In 1867, major schools in America switched from sign to oral methods. And you know who was a staunch supporter of the oral method randomly? Alexander Graham Bell, the guy who invented the telephone.
Who is this guy? I was going to say Helen Keller again.
Yeah. No. So the conflict came to a head at the Milan Conference in 1880. Deaf educators from 7 different countries all gathered in Milan to make decisions about the future of deaf education, and the majority believed that oral methods were superior to sign language.
Are you kidding?
By 1920, nearly 80% of all deaf programs were using oral methods. In some classrooms, signing was banned by violent means, including tying students' hands behind their backs. Deaf instructors in deaf classrooms decreased from 40% to 15%. But, despite the ban, sign lived on. Deaf people still used it outside of schools, under tables, etc. America's National Association of the Deaf was created and stood as a guardian of ASL to make sure that deaf culture and sign language would be protected and preserved for future generations. So, the restoration of sign language happened thanks to a man named William Stokoe, who was a hearing professor at Gallaudet University, the deaf university.
Okay.
At this time, sign language was viewed as a cheap mimicry of spoken languages, a primitive means of communication for those who couldn't hear. But Stokoe's linguistic background revealed that ASL wasn't a mimicry at all. In fact, it carried all the markers of a unique language with its own syntax and grammar. That meant sign language was a fully formed language just like any spoken one. He published his findings in 1960 and developed the first ASL sign language dictionary. In 1965, Congress issued the Babbage Report, which acknowledged the failings of the Milan Conference. ASL was finally recognized as the official language of deaf Americans and became an integral piece of educating deaf children. So I'm going to end with a quote from this article. Quote, many countries still do not have strong support for deaf education, and plenty still haven't recognized sign as an official language. But there's no doubt that sign has developed into a fully fledged and beautiful language of its own right that has connected deaf people all around the world and impacted the lives of individuals everywhere. The end.
Wow. Great topic, Grace. Great topic. I cannot believe, I can believe that we're still living in a time when people won't acknowledge a legitimate language as a legitimate language.
Yeah.
Isn't that great? And by great, I mean not great. Hello.
Yes, but like you said, not
Fun
surprising.
fact, really, really sad fact. Yeah. Sorry.
That whole topic.
Yeah. That's great. Good job on that one.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Should we go to your topic now?
We should. Okay, so my topic comes from the Saturday, November 7th New York Times from Cameron Austin Collins and Paolo Pasco, 32 across. Blank Green, a.k.a. the Witch of Wall Street. And the answer is Hetty. Hetty Green, a.k.a. the Witch of Wall Street.
I have never seen The Wolf of Wall Street. Is this related?
It is not related. I mean, except that they're both about Wall Street. And they both, I think, are play on the name, The Witch of Wall Street, whatever. No, Hetty is not related to Jordan, what's his name, from The Wolf of Wall Street, played by Leonardo DiCaprio. The whole Quaalude scene is like, I don't really like that movie, but I love the Quaalude scene just because I like the idea of Leo DiCaprio rolling around on the ground screaming. Anyway, that was strange. But, so...
What's our topic again?
So who is Hetty Green, you might be asking? She's known as the Witch of Wall Street. Her full name is Henrietta, so Hetty is a nickname. And she was an American businesswoman and a financier known as, quote, the richest woman in America during the Gilded Age. And the Gilded Age is a period of time between the 1870s and like the early 1900s. And it's a period of time with rapid economic growth due to industrialization. So this whole like industrial boom led to a wage growth of about 60% between 1860 and 1890. That's insane.
That'd be nice.
It would be nice, except the Gilded Age was also a period of time of abject poverty and inequality. So you had millions of immigrants like migrating to the United States, you know, working low-paying jobs in horrible conditions. And this is like before we had like a lot of labor laws. Mm-hmm. So, you know, you kind of got best of both worlds. It's kind of similar to how things are now.
Right, not much has changed.
Not much has changed. Some very general facts about Hetty before we get into her history. She was named by the Guinness Book of World Records as the, quote, greatest miser of all time, which meant that she was incredibly rich, but she was also an incredible cheapskate. And she amassed a fortune as a financier when at the time it was all men. So like that's like something to shout out. And after her death, the New York Times stated that it was, quote, it was the fact that Mrs. Green was a woman that made her career the subject of endless curiosity, comment, and astonishment. Okay, so let's talk about it. Let's talk about her history. Let's talk about her career. So, she was born Henrietta Howland Robinson in 1834 in Massachusetts. The Howland Robinson family were Quakers. They were also the richest whaling family in their city. They were millionaires, like swimming in money.
Okay, so she got off on a good start.
Yes, so like as most of these like wealthy people you hear about from like the Gilded Age, like on Wall Street, like they come from rich families. Okay. Mm-hmm. So she grew up reading stock quotations and commerce reports to her grandfather. She learned how to read ledgers and trade commodities from her father. And she would accompany her father to counting houses, storerooms, and to meet traders and stockbrokers. So she was doing all of this while a child. And she was close to her father and grandfather more than her mother because her mother was constantly ill and just not around. And so by age 13, she was the family bookkeeper for the whaling company, which is kind of cool. Or not. Child labor.
Wow, 13, yeah. Oh, you think child labor's cool?
Yeah, you idiots.
You heard it here first.
So she attended finishing school at age 15, and she made her debut as a debutante in 1854 when she was 20 years old. She's
kind of old for a debutante.
It is old for debutante now that we know. And if you listen to episode 65, Girls Are to Women as Boys Are to Wolves, then you would know more about debutantes. To celebrate her coming out, her debut as a debutante, her father bought her, quote, a wardrobe full of the finest dresses of the seasons in order to attract a wealthy suitor. But Hetty sold her new wardrobe and bought government bonds with the proceeds.
Yes.
So she was not interested in that. She moved to New York City shortly after her debut, but she wound up moving back to Massachusetts to please her father and learn the family business. She was an only child, and so her dad and her grandfather were kind of like, okay, we need to teach her how to do everything because our money, like, where's our money going to go otherwise?
Yeah, hello, what's the point of being a millionaire if you can't keep it in your family forever and ever and ever and ever?
Exactly, and watch all these poor people die around you. Hetty's mother died in 1860 when she was 26 years old, and Mrs. Robinson left $100,000 to her husband and a house worth $8,000 to Hetty, which is equivalent to $228,000 in today's money.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's pretty nice
right?
For the time.
As a gift one year, Hetty's aunt gave her $20,000 worth of stocks, which is an equivalent to $569,000, like today. And then in 1865, when Hetty's father died, he left her an estate worth $6 million, which is an equivalent to $100,213,000
Oh
today.
my gosh.
So this woman was rolling in it.
I bet her aunt felt pretty like dumb for giving her those $200,000 stocks.
Well, you just hold on. That was just as a gift. That was just a gift.
I know, but then like a year later, she gets $1 billion. She's like, thanks.
Right. Like, sorry, this wasn't good
Thanks
enough.
for your pennies.
Wow. So that estate that her father left her was $919,000 in cash, a warehouse in San Francisco, and the remainder of was put into a trust fund, which would fund her income. And her father actually set it up so she could not control the principal of the trust. It would just like pay her out and allotted whatever.
He didn't trust her.
He didn't trust her, which is kind of a theme. Like, even though she was super wealthy and she like learned the whaling trade and she learned how to invest and like make all this money and handle money, women were not expected to have bank accounts. They were not expected to handle money, know about money, or learn about money. None of that. So even though she was rich and they were giving her all this money, she wasn't allowed to control it herself. And then the same year her father died, Hetty's aunt died and left a portion of her wealth to Hetty. But it was also left to her in a trust, again, without allowing Hetty to control the principal. And this got messy, and I'm not going to really get into the details of it, but basically Hetty was like, fuck this shit. I want to be able to like use the money in this principal however I want to. And so she like forged a will and like forged her aunt's signature on the will and like took it to court and was like, see, my aunt actually this is her will, and like I can actually do whatever I want with the money. She lost, but whatever.
She tried.
She really fucking tried. So in 1867, when Hetty was 33, she married a man named Edward Henry Green, who was 46.
That's kind of like shocking for the time, both of them.
It is. 46 is not so weird for a man to be marrying. Sometimes
Didn't people die when they were like 50?
Yes, they did. But Hetty married when she was 33. So that's kind of,
At that time, that's
late
ancient.
for
now
a
that's
woman.
like early.
Exactly. So by the time Edward Green was 44 years old, he was already a millionaire. He worked in trade in Boston, and he was a partner at some merchant company. And so before Hetty's father died, he told her, like, he wrote in his will, quote, he stipulated that Hetty's fortune was to be, quote, free from the debts, control, or interference of any such husband. And so before Hetty married this Edward Green fellow, she made him renounce all rights to her money. So basically, he signed a prenup. So good for her. But so he was a millionaire. She was a millionaire. They had their own money. Boom done deli, baby.
Yeah. When you're working with that much money, you need to do a prenup.
You really do. So they lived in Manhattan together for a time. They moved to London, and they had 2 children. Their first child, Edward Howland Robinson Green, a.k.a. Ned. And then the second child, Harriet Sylvia Ann Howland Green Wilkes, a.k.a. Sylvia.
Are they French? They have lots of names.
It's a rich people thing. It's a rich people thing. They just have to have all the names of all the families in there so you know where they come from. So yeah, they get married, they had kids, whatever. Eventually, they separated for a time, but eventually they came back together and lived with each other before they both died. Let's talk about some investing. To be fair, I really don't understand a lot about investing. Like, that's why I had my dad for, like if I wanted to like ask questions about investing. And I don't really understand how the stock market works. Like, very generally, I understand how the stock market works. But if you were to like throw me into the New York Stock Exchange, I'd be like, gotta go.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
Yeah. But so Hetty really understood how it worked. She was really good at it. And apparently her approach to investing was strange for the times. I'm going to read you a couple quotes. Quote, I buy when things are low and nobody wants them. I keep them until they go up and people are crazy to get them. That is, I believe, the secret of all successful businesses. So that was like one of her investing tips. It's kind of vague, to be honest. Maybe
buy low, sell high, baby.
Grace gets it. Grace is an accountant. So there you go. Another quote. Quote, I believe in getting in at the bottom and out on top. I like to buy railroad stocks or mortgage bonds. When I see a good thing going cheap because nobody wants it, I buy a lot of it and tuck it away. I mean, that sounds like common sense, right? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on at the time. That's like what everyone does now. Now there's cryptocurrencies. I'd like to see her wrap her head around that.
Yeah, try again, Hetty. Yeah, so she invested a lot and did lots of all of that stuff. Good for her. Just to give you some like context and like understanding of how much money she was making. So when they moved to London, within her first year in London, she made $1.25 million. That's the first year. That's how much she made in 1 year. And that's in the Gilded Age currency. Like, I didn't convert that to today's time. That's still a lot of money to make in a year. Hello. And then the most she ever earned in a day was $200,000. So she was really good at what she did.
Yeah.
And yeah, so she usually did really well with her own investing, but her husband was less lucky because he sounds like a fucking idiot. She actually had to bail him out multiple times because he was in debt, and like the things he was investing in was like losing him tons of money. The worst time was after the collapse of a financial house called John J. Cisco and Son, of which Edward was a partner. He had $700,000 in debt, like in Gilded Age currency. Hetty had to pay it off. And then she never forgave him after that, because why would you?
She knows how to hold a grudge, baby.
Yes, she does. So, all of this aside, what's the deal with her reputation? Why was she called the Witch of Wall Street? Like, what was so evil about her, right? There was nothing really evil about her, unless you count hoarding wealth as evil. But she was called the Witch of Wall Street because she was a woman. Okay. Yeah. So like that's why she was called the Witch of Wall Street. She was known for her thriftiness. I'm just going to go through a couple things about her reputation. She was known for her thriftiness. She never turned on the heat or used hot water. She wore one old black dress and undergarments that she changed only after they had been worn out. She did not wash her hands, and she rode in an old carriage. She ate mostly pies that cost 15 cents. After the death of her husband, she started wearing mourning clothes, so she was in all black all the time with a veil. And her family would move constantly from boarding house to boarding house or hotel to hotel. Really, like, she was not staying in one place for too long, and all the places she was living were really inexpensive lodgings, right? And so the whole, like, wearing black and wearing the veil, when she would, like, go into New York City to, like, do her investing on Wall Street, she looked, quote unquote, like a witch, you know?
I could see that.
Yes.
Wait, but why didn't she wash her hands? What was that saving? I guess
a water bill.
Saving money on water. What's the point of making all the money? Live a little bit. I mean, I don't think, to hoard it and not even like send a card to the moon. What's the point?
No. She was not sending any cards to any moons, our moon or other moons. So yeah. So apparently her frugality extended to her family life. Her son Ned had like a leg issue, and because she wouldn't take him to the doctor, he had to have it amputated.
Oh my gosh.
Because she delayed so long. Other sources debate whether or not this is true. I'm not sure. I couldn't find either way. I mean, it could be an exaggeration made up by those who disliked her, possibly because she was a woman doing a man's job. Here's a quote from New England Historical Society.com. Quote, "Perhaps her greatest sin in the eyes of the world was living her life boldly on her own terms. People weren't used to a woman who carried a gun, because she did, and used salty language picked up on the New Bedford docks." Remember, her family was a whaling family, so she was on the docks all the time. Nor were they used to a woman who managed her investments spectacularly well at a time when women weren't trusted with money. So, another tale claims of her frugality, her thriftiness, claims that that she spent half of a night, like 12 hours, searching her carriage for a lost stamp worth 2 cents because she didn't want to lose out on that. Another says that she instructed her laundress to only wash the dirtiest parts of her dresses, the hems, to save money on soap. And some claimed she only ate oatmeal heated over her office radiator, so she didn't have to pay for the heating.
Hey, think smarter, not harder.
Hello. And according to Hetty, quote, "Just because I dress plainly and do not spend a fortune on my gowns, they say I am cranky or insane." And like all of these rumors compounded into people calling her the Witch of Wall Street.
Yeah.
In reality, she was a successful businesswoman dealing in real estate, railroads, mines, and lent money to mortgages, and even bailed out the city of New York on multiple occasions. There was the Panic of 1907, which was a financial crisis. You know, they happen all the time on Wall Street. So this happened in 1907, and the New York Stock Exchange fell almost 50% from the previous year. There was panic. Basically, there were numerous runs on banks, all the shit. And Hetty ended up writing the New York City a check for $1.1 million to bail them out of the crisis.
Oh, yeah. So she's the witch until they need her.
Exactly.
I feel like all of those rumors probably aren't true then, of her being like insanely frugal.
Right. I think there's some truth to it probably, but
yeah,
no, people were just making shit up. Another quote from Hetty to all her haters, quote, "I don't think society means what some rich people would have us believe. I should get very tired of living in one of the great houses in New York, going out all night and sleeping all day. They don't have any real pleasure. It's intercourse with people that I like." Okay.
Oh, wait.
No, intercourse, she doesn't mean that like literal like sex.
I was like
the way
we...
She's like a dialogue, you know?
Yeah. She likes to connect with people. She doesn't care about material objects. I can appreciate that.
I can too. Another quote. She also said, quote, "It is the duty of every woman, I believe, to learn to take care of her own business affairs, and, quote, a girl should be brought up as to be able to make her own living." And another quote, quote, "Whether rich or poor, a young woman should know how a bank account works, understand the composition of mortgages and bonds, and know the value of interest and how it accumulates," end quote. It doesn't sound too, outlandish to me, but at the time, she's like telling women like you should have your own bank accounts.
Yeah, but you couldn't get a credit card or something.
No,
like recently.
Yeah, no, it's
a couple decades ago.
I wish I had put this in my research, but it's like a couple decades ago, like you still needed to like have your husband's permission to have a bank account. Like that's crazy.
Yeah.
You needed to be married and you and your husband needed to go into the bank together and he needs to be like on the bank account with you.
And people are like, the divorce rates are going up. Young people don't care about marriage. It's just like, no, you got married because you had to, because you couldn't like
have a bank account.
Yeah.
Like, hello.
Oh, God. Now.
God help us.
I do feel like young people, though, not just women, but aren't really taught about like money management. It's a huge part that's missing out of, I mean, even I went to business school and majored in accounting, and everything I learned about money management, I learned like on my own. They don't really talk about investing and stuff like that or saving.
Right. No, everything that I never learned anything in school, and I'm still learning. Like the fact that like my dad had to like strong arm me into opening a 401k. It's not because I didn't want to, it's because I didn't understand what I needed to do. Like what? I'm not going to pick up a 401k book at Barnes & Noble. I'm just not doing that. So anyway, okay, let's do some other just random facts about Hetty. Hetty's daughter, Sylvia, she lived with her mother until she was 30, apparently because Hetty disapproved of all of the suitors, suspecting that they were all gold diggers. And Sylvia finally got her mother's approval and married Matthew Astor Wilkes of the Astor, family, the rich family, the Astors.
Yeah.
He entered the marriage with $2 million. And so Hetty was like, okay, he's not a gold digger, but Hetty still made him sign a prenup, waiving the rights to Sylvia's money. The problem, though, is like this is like a fast forward. Once Hetty died, she like left a bunch of money to Sylvia in a trust and made like the person controlling the trust Sylvia's brother. She still didn't give Sylvia control of the money. Isn't that crazy?
After what she went through?
Doesn't make any sense. I'm just telling you, this is like internalized sexism, okay?
Yeah. You know what's interesting, though? Like, both these women who had so much money at the time, they both ended up getting married way later. I wonder if that, they didn't need... They could literally survive without being married.
Exactly.
For a lot of women, that wasn't the case.
Exactly. Great point. What else do I got here? Okay. So eventually, like, her kids moved out, and Hetty, like, moved from small apartments in Brooklyn Heights and Hoboken, so she, like, lived outside of the city and would travel into the city. She did this to avoid New York City's high property tax. Her apartments were not heated. Her diet consisted... I know. Her diets consisted of eggs, onions, and dry oatmeal, and she didn't eat hot food because it would have increased her fuel bill. That's factual. I mean,
wow.
Whatever. She saved a lot of fucking money. Not that she needed to save money. She was already rich. It's not like she was like born poor and like
I know.
lived
She's
a
living
frugal
like
life.
worse than I am.
I mean, like I live way beyond my means. She developed a hernia in old age, but refused to undergo an operation. Instead, she would use a stick to press down the swelling.
Oh God, these people.
I mean, hello. So this is just random, and I'm bringing it up because you did an episode maybe 2 episodes ago, 64, 63 on phobias. So apparently Hetty had an office at this bank called Chemical Bank, and that's like where she did most of her business. She would go into New York City, go to Chemical Bank, and like use that office. apparently, she had a lifelong fear that someone would try to poison her. And so she thought people at Chemical Bank were planning to poison her. And so then that's why she actually hired a bodyguard and started carrying a gun, in case people were trying to kill her. She eventually moved to a different office at a new bank because she didn't want to be poisoned.
What if people actually were trying to poison her, though? If she was so hated?
Hello. They wanted her money. They wanted her money. Yeah, so she died in 1916. She was 81 years old. Story goes that she died in the middle of an argument with a maid over the virtues of skimmed milk, though it's suspected that she suffered a series of strokes in her old age, and eventually it led to her death. Some other names that Hetty was known as throughout her life: the Queen of Wall Street, the Wizard of Finance, and richest woman in America. And at the time of her death, she was estimated to be worth between $100 million to $200 million, which is $2.35 billion to $4.7 billion today.
God, she really hoarded all that for nothing. She could have saved a bunch of people.
I read a little bit that she was into subtle philanthropy, and to me it's be like that Lip guy who used all of his, inheritance to start an ASL school and revolutionized sign language for deaf people.
Yeah.
That's what you do with your inheritance, not hoard it and then eat dry oatmeal just to punish yourself for having so much wealth. It's okay, why don't you give your money away to people who actually need it?
She definitely needed some introspection. Yeah, she had some issues. Very interesting. I'm inspired now to invest some more of my money.
There you go. Is now a good time? Ask my father. I have no idea.
Well, they say a crash is coming. There was already a crash in February. Now they say the market is way overvalued and another crash is scheduled to come, but they always say that. And that's the thing. Nobody knows. It's all based on emotion.
And why do we even need this? If it's such if it's so this is me talking about not understanding Wall Street at all, but why do we even need Wall Street if it's just going to crash all the fucking time?
Well, it's because that's how companies get funded.
Fund themselves then.
They can't. That's why they're public companies.
They absolutely can. They're selling products on shelves. That's how you fund yourself. You don't need to be those massive conglomerates. Hello.
It's mutually beneficial.
Is it? Because it doesn't give me any fucking money. Mutually beneficial to who?
Invest in Coca-Cola. They pay out dividends, baby. Next week, this will be an investment podcast. Two worst investment advisors ever.
You know how much my dad tries to get me to care about the stock market? And I'm you're talking to the wrong broad. That's all I'm saying. God.
Yeah. Send him my way.
I send him your way.
Actually, no, I already have a dad who's obsessed with the stock market.
Maybe we can get my dad and your dad
yeah.
and you on a podcast, and I'll just sit out for a week.
That would be the worst podcast ever. My dad's a professor and, likes to teach, but he could talk forever. He doesn't.
My dad is not a professor, but he loves to teach. And he has the same chaotic energy that I do. So imagine getting me.
I would just be the moderator.
With stock market knowledge in a room with your dad. Just for shits and giggles.
All right. So next week, our dads are going to start a podcast. In the meantime, you can follow us on Twitter at The Good Eve Girls.
Or Instagram at The Good Evening Girls.
Or TikTok at The Good Eve Girls.
Yes, we're on TikTok. And if you're feeling super spicy, we do have a new podcast. I mean, it's not new anymore. It's new to you, maybe, if you haven't listened to it. It's called Meet Me in Forks, where we are doing a chapter-by-chapter review of Stephanie Meyer's new book, Midnight Sun, which is essentially Twilight, but told from Edward's point of view.
Exactly. And we have a lot of fun over there. The episodes are also really short, so come check us out. Read along.
Hello.
Do what you gotta do. But until next time.
Until next time, folks. Bye.
Bye.